I'm sure many of you are familiar with the video on the night papyrus theory. I have decided to play with a more specific variation of that theory, one that melds it with another theory. Count how many times I say this theory, you're gonna lose your mind. In my last theory, I worked in a sort of backwards way, using what we know about Papyrus from Undertale to determine his personality and role in Deltarune. In the time since, we have been given a steady feed of Papyrus content in the newsletter, where suspicious things keep being mentioned or implied. Like Papyrus possibly being implied to swear, irrefutable evidence that Toby Fox knows who I am, the creator of Let Papyrus Say Fuck Day, and the internationally renowned artist who made the fingers in his ass background. This is all said in jest, in case that wasn't clear. I've already made a theory about Papyrus being the knight, but even still, I will reiterate what I consider to be legitimate evidence and what I think is not, but I'll try to be quick with it. What we know for sure, the knight is choosing abandoned and little-used rooms as locations for the fountains. The knight seemingly only makes one fountain a day. The knight hid in the closet from Noelle and Birdley, making the Cyberworld fountain in there, which rules out anyone with an alibi for this incident. The knight is a lightener because darkeners cannot make fountains. Okay, I want to elaborate on the knight hid in the closet thing. Some people take that to mean that that's where Birdley's body got stuffed in the weird route. But the thing is, the text is there no matter what route you've taken, and flavor text like that does change across different routes in Toby's games, so why would it be there if you didn't fucking kill Birdley? And also, why would Chris want to stuff Birdley's corpse in a closet? Don't you think that Chris was unsettled and upset by what we have done and would rather someone find Birdley and find out what happened? Like, come on. What I don't think is strong evidence, the use of exclusively it-they pronouns is obviously to maintain the mystery. The hologram that Queen makes of the knight's hand cannot be taken as a 100% accurate depiction because the video of the fountain being opened says the knight is totally obscured by the darkness pouring out. When Spampton says communion in relation to the knight, I don't think it's a legitimate hint. I don't want people who like Alvin as the knight to think I'm singling this theory out, so I will break this down a little further. The practice of communion is Christian, and not even one that is uniformly practiced for all denominations. Other religions may have practices that are similar in what you do, but those are not called communion. The religion practiced in Hometown is in worship of the symbol of the Deltarune and its angel. It is a monster religion that so far only has aesthetic similarities to Christianity, mainly the design of the church and Albin's robes. Also, Spampton's speech patterns are influenced by spam emails. Once I remember my mom reading religious spam mail her aunt or cousin had sent her to show us how ridiculous it is. One email was warning us to respect Jesus and listed alleged examples of celebrities that disrespected God, or whatever, and then they all fucking died. Most assuredly for their blasphemy, I say, sarcastically. Another story was of a girl who left to hang out with her friends in a totally packed car, and the girl's mom told her to pray for Jesus to come and protect her. And then the driver said the only place for Jesus was in the trunk. And then allegedly, they crashed the car, and everyone died, but there was, for some fucking reason, a carton of eggs in the trunk that was totally unscathed. A friend told me they had never heard of religious spam mail, and maybe it's just less common now, but I assure you, it definitely exists, and it tries very hard to scare you with religion and the thought of divine punishment for being a godless heathen. So I disregard it. Spampton is an unreliable narrator. I will not reiterate my rebukes of the other knight candidates. If you want more detail on that, consult my other video. All knight candidates are valid, but, you know, my video, my theory, I have a thought I want to illustrate to you all. So there's some things I'm going to go over before we get to this theory. I'm going to read out some entries from my Papyrus fact list, not theories. I will be putting the source image on screen with each fact listed. This is not a complete list because we still do not have all of Deltarune, so additional Papyrus facts that may eventually exist are absent. And I haven't really added newsletter stuff because of the dubious canonicity. I'm willing to bet the information could be true even if the presentation of the info is not canon. If you guys want me to make a Papyrus fact video, let me know. Continued emphasis in materials outside of Undertale. For the first anniversary of Undertale, Toby made a side blog dedicated to asking the characters from Undertale questions. He offered an example question, which was, Papyrus, what is your favorite food? And no one knows except Flowey, because his favorite food is not spaghetti. He's never even eaten spaghetti. His favorite food is dinosaur egg brown sugar oatmeal, which is a real food, but also a human food. Hey, wait a second. Sorry, real-time interjection as I write this script. But how the fuck is a real-life food that exists but is most certainly a human food in canon his favorite? Most monsters have never eaten human food in their lives. How did he eat human food? He has no organs. Why does it seem to be a secret? Anyways, the Winter Alarm Clock dialogue includes all the characters, but it's at a party Papyrus has thrown. He has 2 interviews, and Sans has 1 also. Physics breaker. Papyrus can fly, float, glide, and break physics casually. I don't think enough of us appreciate that fact. How the hell is he doing that? Other monsters can fly, but those monsters have wings. 4th wall breaking sight. Speaking of Papyrus being weird with regards to physics, he turns to face Frisk as they go through the igloo tunnel in Snowdin, and implies he can see through the phone multiple times, despite the fact that the phone that Toriel gives you is too old to text, let alone video call or send images. Something keeps him up at night. Papyrus seems to sleep very little, only a couple hours a night, which is something reiterated by several people multiple times in the game, and he is the only character to canonically say he has nightmares, even implying that he has enough to have a least favorite nightmare. Restraint. Papyrus is the only character that cannot kill you, not even on accident. He's also the only fight that will heal you before the fight starts if you're not at full health. Even Toriel can accidentally kill you, something that immediately makes her horrified, something she actively avoids doing, but her attacks will do damage no matter what, and yet Papyrus can make attacks that do 0 damage. What is it about Papyrus that gives him this unique level of restraint that he has? The only time he can kill you is the Lost Soul fight. Sans and Papyrus' bone attacks are visibly different from each other, and it's only Papyrus throwing bones in that encounter. Skewed sense of normalcy and morality. Papyrus might have stolen his dating manual from the library, as he says that he snagged it instead of borrowing it, and he directly says he doesn't know what a library card is. He is also very sure that the kids love deadly spikes and dangerous bridges, calling them pillars of youth. He also appears to have a dark sense of humor, as he says in one phone call that he wants to meet death, and when you kill him in the neutral run, he humorously quotes Hamlet while holding his own decapitated head, and cracks jokes. He also uses reverse psychology on Undyne to make her be friends with Frisk. Connections to a reality warping antagonist. He is friends with Flowey and appears to be the only person who knows about him other than Alphys. Flowey has also said that Papyrus took the longest to get boring on his repeated runs, though that doesn't necessarily explain why Flowey continues to be his friend in runs since he became boring. Papyrus also believes that you can be better, and offers to help you improve in the murder route. He is adamant in his beliefs even after you kill him. Why is he so sure of it? Sans says the same thing later in that same route. Strength. Undyne says that Papyrus is really frickin' strong, and the only reason she doesn't allow him into the guard is because of his refusal to kill. Just before the true pacifist fight, when everyone is restrained with vines, Papyrus is the only one to be restrained with 4 vines instead of 2. Why is Flowey seemingly more concerned about Papyrus than anyone else there? More concerned than he is about Undyne, than his parents. In the neutral route where you kill anyone that's not Papyrus before trying to befriend Undyne, she will say that she doesn't want to be friends with a murderer, and Papyrus says, I don't remember murdering anyone, though I am a pretty brutal kind of guy. Weird little fact. The sound effect for opening Papyrus' door is unique for a few reasons, and has a corresponding partner. The sounds door open and door closed are only used in relation to 3 places. One is the true passive ascending in the stay branch, which uses both sounds, Mystery Man / Gaster's room, which uses the open sound, and Papyrus' house. Both sounds appear to be used when the annoying dog runs out of the house from underneath the sink, and the door closed sound is used both for the door to the Skelebros house and for Papyrus' own room. A unique trait shared by Papyrus' room and Mystery Man's room is that all music is turned off when you enter those rooms, even Reunited, the song that plays after you beat the true pacifist fight. It turns off when you enter Papyrus' room, despite the fact that it plays literally everywhere else. Consistently inconsistent. Papyrus knows about motorcycles, airplanes, trains, buses, and cars, but what he does know and doesn't know seems to be inconsistent, sometimes being different across phone calls in rooms that are directly next to each other, sometimes in calls that are in the same room, like when he seems to understand what a toilet is and then immediately acts like he doesn't. During his date, he makes a comment about the sun on his skin and the wind in his hair. But in the true pacifist ending, he once more suddenly doesn't know what the fucking sun is. Connections between the 2 games. There are many connections between Deltarune and Undertale, especially ones that relate to the Skelebros. Icy. Trashy the Trash Can is a character who fucking haunts me, by the way, because it's a reference to an obscure Papyrus phone call, though to be honest, a lot of the Papyrus phone calls are obscure, because unless it mentions Sans, no one talks about it. The teleportation doors in the Dark Worlds look identical to Sans' door. The line Susie says about inviting someone to visit the garbage can is similar to something Papyrus says during his hangout. The reference to Papyrus' tall sink in the second hospital room. Outside of that, there's the fact that Papyrus has more lines of dialogue than anyone else in all of Undertale, at 2,184 lines, which is less than 250 lines behind the narrator of the game, at 2,418 lines. But we still don't know anything about his life before coming to Snowdin, what he did, who he knew, his hobbies and passions, his family outside of Sans. We know more about Gaster's backstory than we do Papyrus. The only thing we know for certain is that there was green grass. Sans also makes comments about not being able to go home, how he'll never see them again. In the Winter Alarm Clock dialogue, Papyrus makes a comment about how he doesn't remember the last time Sans was able to go to a party and celebrate with friends, but just a few weeks before the game takes place, the Skelebros are both invited to a costume party, which is where Papyrus gets his outfit from. The Sans interview has a lot of focus on Papyrus identifying as Seven, a villain, an anti-hero, someone who is misled by someone else to do bad things, so it is someone else who is to blame. And Papyrus says, "What? I'm the villain!" Followed by Sans saying, maybe you seem like an enemy, but you're actually a good guy. And then Papyrus starts sweating with a nervous expression on his face. What? Why would I ever be an enemy? And then the second Papyrus interview has some lines from Papyrus that allude to Jevil, about being a clown in a circus who is imprisoned for being too annoying. I think that there is a compelling argument for Sans and Papyrus being from Deltarune. But first, a tangent. The exclusion of Papyrus from theories that involve Sans but would logically need to involve both of them always dramatically weakens the theory. It makes it sound like you just want Sans to be super special and unique, as if he is not the most popular character in the fandom by an enormous margin. It happens time and again with so many theories. When it comes to these theories, Papyrus is maybe brought up once or twice, like the writer is giving him a participation ribbon in the theory, or he's excluded entirely because the author doesn't get him and wouldn't know enough to include him properly. Sans is a boss monster, but not Papyrus. Okay, why is he not a boss monster if his brother is? And if they're not brothers, then where did Papyrus come from, and why is he going along with this? Sans is a human, but not Papyrus. Okay then, where did Papyrus come from, and why is he going along with this? Sans is a Darkener, but not Papyrus. Okay then, where did Papyrus come from, and why is he going along with this? Sans is from Deltarune, but not Papyrus. Okay then, where did Papyrus come from, and why is he going along with this? And if your answer to this question is something something Papyrus amnesia, something something adopted, even though they were probably both adults, so why? Something something he's just stupid and made the assumption and Sans went along with it, then the theory is bad. They're a package deal. They behave like siblings who grew up together. Contrary to popular belief, Papyrus knows a lot about Sans. Papyrus knows Sans is hiding things from him, and he doesn't like it. Similarly, Sans can tell Papyrus has been feeling down at the start of Undertale and wants you to befriend him to try to cheer him up. But Sans doesn't appear to know why or understand why Papyrus is upset, and I do think he genuinely thought that Flowey was a prank because he seemed to be truly surprised when Flowey jumps everyone at the start of the true pacifist boss fight. So here I am, to fill in those gaps and propose. Sans and Papyrus are both from Deltarune, and Papyrus was the knight. He is a redeemed villain in Undertale, and his vested interest in Flowey and also the player/Frisk in the murder route shows a desire to connect with and help people that are otherwise feared and avoided like he once was. His consistent inconsistencies are because he is unfamiliar with what would be common knowledge in this world where monsters are shielded underground, which explains why he can simultaneously know and not know so many things. You may be thinking to yourself, why would Papyrus get a role so important in Central if he already has so much attention, so many more lines in Undertale than anyone else, so much focus in the newsletters and the anniversary events? Well, I have a similar question. If Papyrus is not important, then why do these things keep coming back to him time and time again? If he is not important, then why is so much related to him? Another thing I hear people question is why an Undertale character would have such a large role in Deltarune, since Deltarune was conceptualized first and Undertale was made after. And I think it's a bit silly to question it, because the way the question is posed supposes that Undertale characters were made for Undertale first, and then were put in Deltarune as an afterthought. If Deltarune was developed first, then why would Toby even reuse characters that you think were made for a totally separate project? There is a connection between them in this game. It makes more sense for these characters to have always been meant to be in Deltarune. Like, we don't know the process Toby went through to develop these worlds and these characters, but considering music that ended up being used for two characters in Undertale, Heartache for Toriel and Bone Trousler for Papyrus, were originally meant to be in Deltarune, then Doesn't it make more sense that they were Deltarune characters first and Toby used them in Undertale afterwards? Or at the very least, when they were being developed, Toby kept in mind that he would use them for both projects? Papyrus and Sans being from Deltarune before coming to Undertale explains the weirdness that both of them have, and explains the things Sans says. Maybe the trip to another world gave them their time and space warping powers, a side effect of the journey. Papyrus has weird elements about him which one could argue are one-off jokes, and it feels inevitable that some of them will be, but there's other things that get brought up long after they are first mentioned, like how Papyrus never takes off his gloves. It is first brought up by Papyrus himself in one of the phone calls. He makes a joke about knowing Hotland like the back of his hand, which since he is always wearing gloves, he doesn't know anything about. But then it's brought up by Toriel, again in the Winter Alarm Clock dialogue, where she gets a sort of baffled look on her face as she describes making Papyrus mittens to wear on top of his gloves. There's a lot of emphasis on hands and washing hands in Deltarune, and my current no evidence theory for this is that Papyrus's hands are permanently stained with darkness from opening the fountains. It's a cool idea, but I'm able to look at this and understand that it's pure conjecture. It'd be totally sick if it ends up being true, though. If it is true, I think I would simply ascend to the astral plane and become a cosmic being. Papyrus's friendship with Flowey is really unexplored, likely because it's meant to be a sort of ominous backdrop that occasionally appears like a shark fin in the water. But like the glove thing, it appears over and over again. Flowey knows things about Papyrus that no one else knows, as we see in the first anniversary Q&A. Flowey is close friends with Papyrus even after getting to the surface, as is shown in the Winter Alarm Clock dialogue. Flowey feels like he can trust Papyrus, actively choosing to befriend him in many of his runs. You could argue that Flowey is only doing that to use Papyrus because of how the true pacifist ending plays out, but that does not explain why Flowey cares enough about Papyrus to remember his favorite food, or still hang out with him, and wear matching clothes after Flowey is defeated in his fight. Flowey says the Papyrus took the longest to get boring on his repeated runs, and that's a line I used to think pointed towards further evidence that he has some reset awareness, which is in addition to his insistence that he already knows you when you go through the forest for the first time again. Now, though, I wonder if this line is implying some sort of fascination with some aspect of who Papyrus is as a person, which, relatable. But in this case, as Flowey is the main antagonist of Undertale, and it seems like Papyrus is such a sincerely kind and compassionate person, if there wasn't a depth to Papyrus's choice to show kindness, then Flowey could easily write him off and degrade him like he does to so many other people. But instead, Flowey seems to really care about Papyrus and thinks of him fondly. There's a lot of little stuff about Papyrus that clash against his cheerful and nice demeanor. How he probably stole his dating manual from the library, the fact that he was fine with imprisoning Frisk in his shed and feeding them dog food, which even Undyne seems to think was too much. He pretends to be unsure if he's killed before and then admits that he is brutal. There are several instances in-game of him being sarcastic and mocking, but in a lighthearted way. If you call him immediately after you receive his number and he's left the room, he'll ask you if you know what a door is. He calls anime cartoons for babies. In one of the neutral ending calls, he says, "I'm finally important, and it's all thanks to you, and the horrible things you did." He also goes along with working for Mettaton in his King ending, even though he seems to be fully aware that Mettaton is disappearing people, which is something that I always found odd. Why does Papyrus continue to work for someone who, at least, is imprisoning people somewhere, and at most, is having people killed? So when people say Papyrus is too nice to be the knight, based on how he is in Undertale, you're forgetting he worked for an authoritarian dictator canonically. Multiple times even, when you remember the Empress Undyne ending. There is a point in the game where he pulls out his Gauntlet of Deadly Terror bridge and he realizes that it's a bit too much for Frisk, so he dials it back. The voice he is typically interpreted to have is Skeletor, a villain, which is probably primarily due to his iconic laugh, which is a type of laugh usually given to over-the-top cartoonish villains like Skeletor, Gargamel, and Dick Dastardly. His actions with the Gauntlet of Deadly Terror imply his intent to be very aggressive, and him pulling back the trials he has placed shows a less instinctual, better nature. I heard once that the first thing you think is how you are conditioned to think, or it is your unconscious habit, and the second thing you think, or your reaction to the first, is how you really feel. Papyrus's first instinct was to make a murder bridge, and once he realized that it was in fact not a fun puzzle, but a fucking murder bridge, he disengaged it. Which brings me back to his insane levels of restraint. No other monster has the level of restraint he has. Even those that don't want to kill you can kill you, but not him. Since harm is tied to intent for the power of monster attacks, then Papyrus must be so totally adamant in not wanting to kill you that he can make his attacks hit you but never hurt you when your health is already too low. It's hard to speculate on how he does it when it is so anomalous as to be contained to him alone. But I think that it is certain that there is a reason that Papyrus has developed this restraint. He says when he's trying to get the human to stand down in the murder run, "It feels like your life is going down a dangerous path. I, Papyrus, see great potential within you. Everyone can be a great person if they try. And me? I hardly have to try at all. Which still implies that he has to try, that he's working to better himself. If he did not perceive himself as needing to improve, he would have said, "And with me to help you, I know you'll succeed." There are a few other times that implies he has a low opinion of himself. In one of the phone calls, he asks if you are lost and tells you to call someone for help. But if you call him again in the same place, he asks why you're calling him. At the end of Papyrus's hangout, he will say, "I'm glad we're friends, but I think you can reach your max potential if you live more for your own sake rather than just mine." Hey, I know a solution. You should hang out with my boss, Undyne. I think if you spread your friend energy out more, you'll have a more healthy lifestyle. Yeah, let's be friends with Undyne. There are many implications with how he phrases that. He speaks in a way I feel comes from personal experiences, with relying on a single person to be your friend and how it's unhealthy. He also calls Undyne his boss, and then says, "Let's be friends with Undyne," like he feels he is not her friend. In Deltarune, you have the option to fuck with Sans and imply you know him, over and over. In Deltarune, Papyrus has yet to speak, and he is mentioned by name on the Steam page. He's busy. In Undertale, both of the Skelebros appear to be struggling with things. Sans talks about missing people, about never seeing them again, about not being able to go back. In Undertale, despite the cheerfulness Papyrus may present, Sans directly says at the start of the game that Papyrus has been feeling down lately. So many people can see the shadiness in Sans because he is honestly pretty bad at hiding it. Sans knows more than you would expect, but he lies through omission. He lies by dodging the question, which is suspicious and shady. And everyone knows that it is, Sans just doesn't care. Papyrus lies too. He lies by pretending not to know anything. They both know something and they are both hiding it. But because Papyrus is supposedly happy and plays dumb, people buy it wholesale. People ignore all the shady things Papyrus does. A thing that struck me once was a post on Tumblr I saw years ago, very early in the fandom, where someone used a Papyrus phone call, the one in front of Sans' telescope and waterfall. The poster was excited. Papyrus says, "Huh? My brother? Of course he has a telescope. Sans loves outer spacey sci-fi stuff." And that was only part of the call they showed. At the time, I think they were using it to show Sans' connections to science, and thus Gaster. The part they didn't show, the last two lines of the call? He never told you? Yeah, Sans never tells anybody anything! But Papyrus knows. While developing this, I decided to have a little fun and rework my knight profile around this theory. People assume if it is Papyrus then he's being manipulated, or they put a point against him being the knight because they say, if all we have to do is convince him to stop, and he does, then that's not a very satisfying climax. I do believe that the knight isn't the final antagonist. I've been watching a lot of Deltarune theory videos in preparation for writing this, and I agree that there are so many overarching mysteries that run alongside the mystery of who the knight is, that it makes sense for there to be a greater antagonist beyond them, much like how Flowey is the final antagonist of Undertale, while Asgore is built up as the primary. Maybe the knight is being manipulated, directly or indirectly, though I think if the knight is Papyrus, it makes sense that he is not actually being directly manipulated. When Papyrus is determined to do something, nothing can stop him except himself. He would know the prophecy, but he would think it's exaggerated or bullshit. He is not being thoughtful or careful because he's just carefully taking one step at a time closer to the roaring and hoping it doesn't blow up in his face. He's being methodical because he wants to open as many fountains as he can manage without being caught, because if the prophecy is real, then that means there are people closing his fountains, hence him using abandoned and little-used rooms. Maybe he thinks that opening a lot of fountains will be a good thing, even if he doesn't get a chance to go into them now, giving himself many options for the future. While determining how the final confrontation with the knight would go, how there will only be one ending, I remembered a book series I absolutely loved when I was younger. A book series I loved so much that my mom told the librarians at the school and public libraries in town we lived in not to allow me to check out those books. The book series is Cirque du Freak, within which there are two warring factions of vampires, warring because of a prophecy that both factions will have a champion, and whichever succeeds in killing the other will cause the losing faction to be totally wiped out. In the 10th book, the main character goes to a weird and twisted place, on a quest to help his friend on a spiritual mission. The world he is in is twisted beyond recognition, full of hostile landscapes and horrifying beasts. At the end of this book, he learns that this is not another world or realm, but the future of the world, if the Lord of Shadows comes to power. In the final book, he is fighting the champion of the other faction, believing him to be the one who will become the Lord of Shadows and destroy the world and doom the future. But then the true antagonist appears, and reveals that no matter who wins, the victor will become the Lord of Shadows and doom the world. Darren, the main character, is so horrified and disgusted by the idea that his fate is stolen from him that he is doomed to become a terrible evil. The true antagonist mocks both of them, heaping praise on Darren, who has struck a fatal blow on the other, who is now slowly dying, while cheerfully describing the horrible fate Darren will bring. Darren is delirious, and really fucked up from the fight. He knows he will win and still manage to recover, but when faced with the inevitability of him being a tool to destroy everything, he chooses to grab the guy he stabbed and roll into the river, intentionally drowning them both to rob the true antagonist from any possibility to use either of them for his plan. The knight will be confronted with the truth of them being just as much of a puppet as everyone else, an instrument used and discarded, and it will make them so mad that they will use their strings to sabotage destiny. If the Undertale Skelebros truly are from Deltarune, then there has to be a reason that it is them and them alone. Alphys, Undine, Mettaton, Napstablook, the Dreamers, they all have histories. They are established. Sans and Papyrus showed up one day and asserted themselves. It makes the most sense that one of them is going to be involved in the climax, and it makes the most sense for it to be Papyrus. Something is going to happen, and I think he will sacrifice himself with Sans following after to undo what he has done. I told myself not to get too attached to this theory because I knew that it's kind of a long shot, but through my research to make both of these theories, which I did primarily as a means to continue to spread the sentiment that Papyrus is a grown-ass man and not a sentient hang-in-there kitty poster, I became more endeared to it. I still want to be realistic and not hold on too strongly, so I'm not disappointed if I'm wrong, because I'm sure whatever the truth is will still be interesting and well-written. I just want it to be true very much. It would explain a lot of the oddities and mysteries Papyrus has that have vexed me for the last 10 years. I hope that you all have been entertained by my video, if nothing else. Please tell me your thoughts in the comments and share with your friends. I want there to be discussions, even if you think I'm wrong. Have a nice day, and thank you for watching. Sorry if the audio for this is a little bit rushed, by the way. It's just, I have my wisdom teeth getting removed tomorrow morning, and I ran to finish this script, and I ran to finish this audio, so there might be a little bit more fuck-ups here than usual. But that's just because I want to say the whole script before a bunch of teeth get yanked out my skull, you know? Anyways, goodbye!